band is so deeply rooted in our friendship. I just don't think it works when we're just trying to think of it in a just straight music theory kind of way. Like we have to be present and experimenting with it.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name's Gary, and I'm from the band They Grieve.
And Gary, how would you describe They Grieve? What kind of music do you make?
I guess the easiest way to describe it would be like post-metal is a pretty easy one to use. I know that's kind of a wide umbrella these days, but yeah, I guess post-metal with a focus on drone and sludgy doom kind of stuff, I guess.
And when we say post-metal, what are we talking about?
To me, post-metal, I guess I think of like bands like Isis, Neurosis. People have kind of tried to mix, heavier riffs with kind of prettier like post-rock kind of stuff and electronics. That's kind of where my mind goes.
So would you say that They Grieve is, if we're talking about post-metal and post-rock and some of the ambient and drone influences that you have, would you say that They Grieve is mostly a slow band with a lot of atmosphere?
Yeah, I would say we're pretty slow. I mean, not as slow as, maybe like Funeral Doom or something like that, but we have a little bit more, I guess, some mid-tempo stuff, but we are pretty slow paced.
Okay. So I should mention that They Grieve has been on Dreams of Consciousness before. We did a Q&A back in the beginning of 2018. Your previous EP, I Made My Sacrifice Accordingly. Everyone can check out that Q&A. It's still online. But for the people who are not familiar with your band, would you mind just briefly talking about how you and Dennis met and what led to you guys forming They Grieve?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've known Dennis for a very long time now. I think the first time we met was actually my previous band, Alaskan. The place that we jammed was in the basement of my apartment. And we used to throw shows there. And Dennis he was, like maybe 16 years old or something. And he came to one of our shows alone, and it was like his first basement show. He didn't know what to do or who to talk to or anything. I think that's the first time I met him. I think we became fast friends just from his intrigue in music and stuff like that. And just, hanging around shows. We quickly started to like collaborate with each other in other projects and stuff. And then Dennis ended up filling in on drums for the last few shows for Alaskan. But I mean, we started They Grieve before that. I think it was just more like I was itching to start something new. The initial project was supposed to be more of like a drone-based project. So Dennis and I started jamming, and then with everything that happened with Alaskan, we kind of just fell heavier into this project, and it kind of snowballed from there.
And we should mention that They Grieve is a duo. It's just you and Dennis.
Yeah, I kind of always forget to mention that. Yeah, Dennis and I. It's just Dennis and I. We're just two guys.
And Dennis handles the drums, and you handle the guitars and the vocals and some of the effects as well.
Yeah, Dennis actually does electronics as well and vocals. So we're both kind of pushing ourselves to the limits, I guess.
Yeah. And why a duo?
I don't know why. I think once we started writing music, we liked the idea of it being just the limitation of two, and just trying to see how we could kind of push that and how we can kind of create layers and stuff like that to make the band sound larger than just two people. I mean, there are tons of two-piece bands that have kind of operated within the same rough genre of like post-metal or like metal, but they always kind of sound like two guys. And we were kind of like, how do we break out of that? How do we make it sound like more than two guys doing? So I think it was just more of like an experiment at first. And then once we started to really get into how we were writing songs, it kind of felt like adding a third person would just kind of change the momentum and change the way we write completely. So it would kind of just be a different project if it wasn't just the two of us.
And what was the solution to that problem? How do you make They Grieve sound like more than two people?
We tried with a few different things. I mean, one, like Dennis playing, electronics and drums at the same time. We both do a lot of live looping. And then we also do have like just loops that we trigger that are just usually more drone based stuff. So like texture based loops and stuff like that. So that's a lot of it. I mean, another part of it is my guitar tone. I split my signal three ways. So I have two guitar amps and a bass amp. The bass is an octave down, and that kind of dictates also what type of chords I play. So all of that all together, kind of, we try to push to make it sound like there's at least two other people up there. We are kind of pushing for more experimentation with more instruments and more electronics and stuff, just to kind of give us more tools, I guess, to use.
If you wouldn't mind elaborating, when you say that your setup affects what kind of chords you use, what do you mean by that?
Well, certain chords will just not, like, if you play a really, I don't know, a big, even a minor third or something, you play this big chord that would sound really good just through guitar with a lot of distortion. Once you add an octave down to that and you're still using the same instrument to play it, it adds a lot of overtones that you wouldn't expect, that will kind of pop out just because of the way your ear is processing what's happening. So a lot of the time that will kind of, once we start writing with the full amp setup, we notice what's popping out, and that will sometimes trigger, okay, well, maybe we need to like really accentuate that melody or that we're hearing, or like we notice a note that might not be actually in the chord we're playing, but like maybe we need to kind of put that in a synth layer or something to help push that forward more. Or, maybe I shouldn't play the fifth in this chord because it kind of adds too much mud or too much weird overtones that kind of take away from the melody that we're trying to force forward. So it's just, it's kind of a lot of, it's just a lot of overtone buildup is really the issue.
Okay. And I believe in the Q&A that we did, you mentioned that They Grieve was also a way for the two of you to be more collaborative as opposed to the way songs came together for your previous projects.
Yeah, I know, like for Dennis, the other projects he was in, he was never, except for one project, he was never really the principal songwriter. So he was always just kind of either playing drums or, playing, second guitar or something. And for me in Alaskan, I was the principal songwriter, but there wasn't a lot of, collaboration. So it was just kind of like I would come with, a mostly formed song, and then we would kind of, work it out too, so that everyone's comfortable with what's happening in the song, and then that would be it. So this was more of a way to experiment with two songwriters, and nothing is off the table. So we'll write a part, and we'll both have kind of conflicting ideas of where it should go. So we'll just try both ways, or try to incorporate all the ideas into something. I'll have ideas for drums. Dennis will have ideas for riffs. It's just a more interesting and more collaborative way of writing. It takes a little longer, but yeah, it's a more interesting process for me.
And as far as how songs come together, is most of it happening in the rehearsal room?
Yeah.
Or do you guys also do some like file sharing and stuff like that?
We tried to do file sharing early on in the band. After the EP was released, I actually moved to Vancouver for about a year. So we were like, oh, we'll just, we'll try writing over the internet. It didn't go very well. I think I wrote maybe one song idea, and we never really figured out a way of kind of working on it back and forth. And by the time I got back, we had scrapped everything in that song that I'd written. It just didn't really work out. So yeah, the majority of the writing happens at the rehearsal space. A lot of the time I will have like a riff idea, and we'll just kind of run with it from there. And then we'll both take it back and be like, oh, you know what? I think we both have some ideas of where we can go with this. And then we come back with those ideas and then continue kind of chipping away at it from there.
What do you think the file sharing process didn't work for you guys?
I know personally, I think Dennis probably feels the same way. I think we just both work better when we're present in the moment and bouncing those ideas. It's a very like organic and yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like a lot of it has to do like the band is so deeply rooted in our friendship. I just don't think it works when we're just trying to think of it in a just straight music theory kind of way. Like we have to be present and experimenting with it. Another part of that is also just, again, with the rig setup I have, sometimes writing a part and then coming to the practice space and playing that exact same part just does not translate with the octaves and stuff like that. So it's just easier to kind of chip away at it and kind of discuss and talk through what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I also feel, and I don't know how you feel about it, but this kind of doom metal, slow, heavy drone type of music is extremely visceral and not not cerebral the way that, like, say, like a prog metal or a tech death or whatever kind of band is, where you're just sitting and listening to the notes and listening to the instrumentation. Like, there is something about it that if you're not listening to it the way it was meant to be heard, meaning, feeling it live or, playing it through your speakers, like, I think a lot of the impact is lost.
Yeah, I agree. The especially for us, a lot of what we're doing is deep rooted in, like I said, in our friendship, but also in conversations we have about, our own experiences and our own depression and stuff. And it's the riffs really come from our own feelings of our own lives and the world around us. So that visceral nature is, yeah, definitely deep rooted in the music for sure.
And there is also, something that happens in the rehearsal room that is almost impossible to, or maybe just, playing live generally, whether it's in the rehearsal room or at a show or whatever, that's almost impossible to translate to a recording, especially if it's, piecemeal in the form of, like, riffs sent over Dropbox or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and it's much easier to be like, you know what if we tried half that riff in five and the next half in, four, just to see what happens. You can't really do that on the fly, just trading tracks via Dropbox and stuff. But yeah, I agree. Even just seeing louder like doom bands or post metal bands, there is a very euphoric kind of nature to seeing that kind of music and feeling like the emotion in the music itself. And I think, yeah, that's why so far, I mean, before ramping up to the release of the new record, all of our success has really just been word of mouth, because I mean, we only had that EP that we released, like you said. Like, I mean, the 2018 was a re-release of the EP. So I think we've really done well as a band so far, just from word of mouth, from people seeing us live. That live experience has really been a big part of our success so far.
And when do the ambient parts and the loops and things like that come in? When do you guys decide to add it, and how do you come up with those parts?
I think the more, I guess, the we made a conscious decision to focus more on that while writing this record. So it kind of happened organically with writing the songs. A lot of it is just like, oh, again, this riff maybe sounds like too empty, or there's not enough kind of going on here. So what if we added a drone layer underneath it? Or yeah, just stuff like that. I think we're trying to experiment a lot more with the drone stuff. Our live sets, there's a lot more kind of freestyle drone loops going on in between songs where we roughly know what we're doing, but it's really kind of off the cuff, and then we just go into the next song. So everything kind of flows a lot better. Dennis has always been really, really into drone. He's a lot more into it than I am, but it's always been, I think even at the beginning of the Grieve, it was like, this is something I really want to experiment with. I want to be better at kind of creating these soundscapey kind of loops and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's hard to say when we decide, oh, this is where it's going to be, but I think it's just sometimes we feel, oh, this part needs something a little more. And I think a lot of it is also based off like, well, how can we realistically do this in a live setting too? And it's easier to do that with a loop that has some movement, but it's more of like a insinuated melody than it is an actual melody. It's easier to kind of play along to.
Would you say that the live version or your ability to play these songs live affect the way that you write songs in terms of not wanting to do anything that you wouldn't be able to pull off live?
I think initially that definitely was the case. When we first started the band, we were like, that was something we really prided ourselves on. It's like everything we do, like we can do live. I think it was almost kind of like silly how much we were priding ourselves on that. But I think we're a little more open to it being, other layers that are just wouldn't be able to be pulled off. But it is also still important to us to have to be able to do as much of it as we can live, and like without like backing tracks and stuff either. We're not trying to just play to like a computer track or something. It really is trying to be like as organic as possible.
You used the word experiment a few times. How clear of an idea do you have of where you want a song to go when you start? And how different is the finished version from what you guys initially thought you were creating?
We really, I mean, I have no idea a lot of the time. A lot of the time I have a riff and we'll sit on a riff for months before we kind of figure out even one more part that we think kind of fits. Yeah, I don't have it's not like writing for Alaskan where it's like, I have an idea of where I want this to go. I have an idea what parts I want to include in a song or what type of parts. Yeah, this is way more experimenting, way more organic. Just let's see what happens and then kind of fine tune it from there. Like we mentioned in a few interviews now that, writing this record, we had written most of these songs pretty early on, or some version of them. And then a lot of them got picked apart and rewritten, or at least like structurally shuffled around. And we also rewrote huge chunks of songs that we were even playing live at the time that we were just like, that there's something just not quite right about it. So yeah, I guess like even when we're playing them live, we're not really sure where those songs are going to go.
Is there a lot of improvisation either in the studio or live?
Well, live we do some improv in between songs. There's not a lot of improv as far as all the songs that we're playing now are stuff that's recorded, so we try to stay it pretty true to the recording. In the studio, I think we had kind of figured out mostly what we wanted to do. I think there was a few like synth layers that Dennis didn't quite have figured out that we kind of just did off the cuff in the studio and then really liked the result of.
So, To Which I Bore Witness is the name of the first They Grieve album, and it will be coming out through Silent Pendulum Records on February 24th of this year. When did you actually start working on these songs?
I think there's been some version of one of the songs on the album probably as early as 2018. Yeah, it was. I mean, there was a lot of roadblocks in writing the album, and like I said, we had completely rewritten most of it throughout the years as well. I mean, and then recording started in I think almost 3 years ago at this point. So it's just been a very long process for us. But yeah, I think I would say we started writing those songs probably as early as 2018.
When were you happy with the version of the songs? When did you feel like you were ready to put them out into the world?
I think we started doing some pre-production recordings in probably late 2019 or early 2020. I think at that point we were pretty satisfied with, yeah, we were pretty satisfied with the structure of the songs and stuff at that point. And then we were doing pre-production just to make sure there weren't any layers or little things that we thought might benefit from adding. But structurally and like the main like bones of the songs were completed by then for sure.
And you worked with Topon from Fuck the Facts for this recording, right?
Yeah. I've known Topon for a really long time. He recorded most of Alaskan stuff, so it was a pretty easy decision to make at that point when we were ready to record.
Recorded the EP yourself, right? You guys recorded it in your own studio?
Yeah. It was a failed experiment. We kind of did a lot of like long overnight recording sessions because we were recording in a jam space where there was 20 or 30 other bands jamming in other rooms. So we had to kind of wait them out till it was like super late at night and then start recording. There are moments of that EP that I really enjoy, but I think we could have done better as far as this production goes. But I mean, some people really, really like it. Some people think that it kind of adds to it. But I guess just personally, I feel like I could have done a little better. But yeah, we did record it. We self-recorded it. I think the goal was just to get something out and then to see where we go with the next batch of songs. We wanted to step up the production quality for sure. And then, we had some money that we could put into it. And I know Topon, and I know he does really good work and he's really easy to work with. So it was time to kind of like try a studio for this stuff. And I think the result is kind of speaks for itself.
So I've spoken to a few people who've worked with Topon. What do you like about working with Topon? What would you say he brings to your sound?
Topon he's very patient. He's also very easy to work with. It's a very calm working environment. You don't feel, stressed or like worried about time crunch or anything like that. He's also kind of willing to kind of just go with the flow. Let's try anything and everything. Nothing's off the table. I think there's a couple of moments on this record where he was getting really excited about trying things, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to go into the room with the guitar cab and I'm just going to swing the mic while we're recording this part and see how that turns out and stuff. So I think it's just seeing like someone who I grew up idolizing as a local musician, and then seeing him kind of get excited about what we're doing. I think that's part of it for sure.
Did you do all the recording with Topon, or did you record some parts elsewhere?
We did record some piano. A friend of mine has a studio in his house. His name's Alex. I think he calls the studio Uppercut Studio because, well, we needed a piano that was relatively in tune. So he was gracious enough to kind of let us in his home for a day, and we recorded some piano tracks.
And where did you send this to get mastered?
We went with Dave Williams at 8 Floors Above. He's a local guy. He's done plenty of local punk and metal records. And yeah, I mean, I think he did some mastering for Alaskan back in the day as well. So I was kind of just going through my old address book and just kind of using people I know. Yeah, but Dave does great work, and he's super quick and not super expensive. So that kind of helped.
So I'm actually not familiar with the label that's putting this out. What can you tell me about Silent Pendulum?
So I know Mike, the founder of Silent Pendulum, through his old band Black Table, who Alaskan played a few shows with when we did our US tour. He's seems to be focused more on kind of more tech metal kind of stuff or mathy kind of metal, like the number 12 looks like you and stuff like that. I mean, he's doing great stuff. He does like limited press. He seems like I think all of his stuff looks great. All of his press looks great. So I reached out to him when we were looking for a label because we were having a lot of trouble finding them. We were at the cusp of just we were going to do it ourselves. We were just going to self release it and kind of hope for the best. But at the last minute, Mike got back to me and he was like, "Give me 24 hours to listen to this, and I'll get back to you." And then he was like, "I want to do it." I think we had offered like, "Oh, do you want to split it? We'll pay part of it." And he's like, "I'll do the whole thing. Don't worry about it." And yeah, it's interesting. I feel like we're a bit of an odd fit for the label, but I mean, it's everyone at the label has been great, super supportive. Yeah, it's been a good experience so far.
And when you say split it, you meant like different labels handling different parts of the production in terms of physical manufacturing?
Yeah, we were meant more like the cost of pressing because I think that was like the big issue is we couldn't find a label who was willing to press it to vinyl, which was what we really wanted to do for the first pressing of it. So I mean, we were already talking to the pressing plant at that point, and we were about to send them a deposit, and then Mike was like, "Hold on a second, let me listen to this record first." So yeah, I mean that helped out a lot because then we had money to kind of put into promotion and stuff like that, which is nice.
And at the time that we're having this conversation, the album is set to drop at the end of the week. What do you have planned for right after that?
So the day after we're doing the album release show in Ottawa at House of Targ. So if anyone listening to this is in Ottawa, come to House of Targ. And then the following weekend, we're going to do like a little run in the GTA. We're working on some other stuff for April, some other shows, but that's about it so far.
So by the time people hear this podcast, the first They Grieve album, To Which I Bore Witness, will be out through Silent Pendulum Records. Gary, what's the best way to get the album? How can people order it?
There's currently a pre-order now from Silent Pendulum's website. That's your best bet if you wanted to make sure you get a vinyl copy. Otherwise, seeing us live, you can purchase from us directly. Alternatively, if you just want to stream it, it will be available on all streaming services probably come the 25th. So Spotify, Deezer, all those, Apple Music, all those streaming services should have it by then.
And you guys have your own Bandcamp page, right?
We do, yeah. Yeah. I guess you could also get it on Bandcamp. Yeah, that should be live on the 25th as well if you wanted to purchase it directly from us digitally.
Tell me about the vinyl that Silent Pendulum is putting out.
There's 3 limited colors, all limited to 100, I believe. You can get 2 of them via Silent Pendulum, via pre-order, and then we have a 3rd color that you can only get from us.
Get through you meaning when you guys play live?
Yeah. We'll be selling them, just at shows.
Okay, cool. And if people want to follow They Grieve online, what's the best way to do that?
We're probably mostly active on Instagram. We do also have a Facebook page. We have, we try to post on Bandcamp every now and then, any kind of real big updates. We also have a Patreon if you wanted to support us. I think the lowest is like $3 Canadian. So if you wanted to just, support us that way, we try to kind of give you access to behind the scene videos. We did some rig rundown videos initially, and we're hoping to do some kind of droney jam videos for people as well. But it's mostly just like if you feel like, you can throw $3 a month our way just to help us out, that'd be great.
So I think you guys are the first band I've spoken to who has their own Patreon. What do you like about the platform?
I think we kind of just dove into it because of the pandemic. Once we weren't able to play shows and we didn't really have the album out yet, it kind of really limited our way of kind of making any kind of income as a band. So it's an interesting platform. I like that it's pretty open, freeform. There's not very many limitations to what you can offer your audience. And it's just a kind of a nice way to reach a broader audience. And, I mean, you can set your minimum thing to something super small, like $1 or something. So it's nice to just be able to give people an option to kind of support bands and artists in a new kind of, I guess, more online centrist kind of way.
Yeah. Do you feel that Patreon is a better way of interacting with your audience?
We haven't quite mastered it yet. We're not the greatest at it. Dennis and I we're it's hard for us to focus a lot of the time. So, coming up with like material for Patreon is not our best. Yeah, we're not great at it. But the few patrons that we do have that we have interacted with, it does make it a little easier. I find it's easier to follow than kind of just social media stuff. We have a pretty diehard fan in Ireland through Patreon who's we've been interacting with, who's really great. So yeah, I think it's a good way. It's a good tool, especially if you can really put the time and effort into it. It's useful for sure. It is kind of an undertaking though. If you already have trouble kind of making time for other band stuff like writing music, it's kind of hard to make more time for Patreon content.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly familiar with Patreons for podcasts and comic books and things like that.
Right.
I don't know. I'm interested to see how this goes as far as like bands using the platform and what kind of content they put out there. It does seem like for bands that do a lot of jamming or a lot of improvising, it would be interesting to see like the process of how the songs come together and the different versions the way songs differ from like the recorded version.
Yeah, I think the hard part of that is just having some kind of setup in order to capture those things, right? That's what we noticed really quick, like early on, is it's like, oh yeah, I guess we need like a camera and stuff. And I mean, I have some recording gear, but it's like, do we have like, should we set something up at the practice space that's just always there, or are we going to bring things back and forth all the time? And yeah, so it's kind of the logistics part is what makes it kind of more difficult. But yeah, I mean, if you're a really creative person and already know your way around editing software and stuff, it can be really useful for sure.
And is that something you're interested?
I think, yeah.
Like the visual component of editing?
Yeah, I kind of got into it I had fun making the gear videos and stuff like that. And even, I don't know if you saw some of the promo we did for that on Instagram, but it was just fun cutting together all the like bloopers and stuff like that, all the funny stuff, and using that as its own kind of thing. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I could ever make a living out of it, but it's fun to experiment with.
Cool. Well, excited to see where this goes. Is there anything else you want to say?
Ooh, I don't know. I guess if you see that we're coming to a town near you, by all means, come. Or if you have any suggestions of where we should go, where we should play, by all means, send us a message. I think, like we were saying earlier, seeing us live, I think, is still probably the best way to experience it. But I guess the record is a close second.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, no problem.